One of the questions that I have been asked several times, in fact many times, is about Israel's response, whether it is proportional or disproportional, whether it is harsh or not. And as I said, let me just put this out of the way now. My heart bleeds for all the victims here. I'm a father of two young kids. I have a beautiful daughter, I have a beautiful son, and every time I see the images of dead children on both sides here, my heart bleeds, because I remember then everything that I've seen in Bosnia and Afghanistan and other combat theaters that I have seen before and I've witnessed. So this is why I want to remove emotions altogether now out of the window, because we are discussing here, whether the, based on the questions I've received, whether Israel's response is proportionate or disproportionate. And the answer is neither. It's neither proportionate or disproportionate, because this is not a response. The reality is that after the Bataclan attack in Paris in 2015, when scores of ISIS militants went on a rampage in Paris, what did the French Air Force do after that? They went and they bombed the living hell out of ISIS in Syria. The reality is that this is when finally, the opinion among many policymakers in DC and London and Paris and other capitals turned firmly towards getting rid of the problem once and for all. So they realized that there is no coexistence, with ISIS, with Daesh. So I think the Israeli policymakers were willing to tolerate Hamas as long as Hamas were playing by the rules of engagement. And that is, one war every 3 years, you hit me, I hit you, and everything is, either proportionate, disproportionate, is not our concern here. The reality is that there is always the push and pull between the two sides, because there is an absence of a political framework. Why there was an absence of political framework and a roadmap towards solving the Gaza blockade problem is simple, because the Israelis wanted the Palestinian Authority to be restored to power in Gaza. That's it. That's all they wanted. They didn't want anything else. They just wanted the Palestinian Authority to take control back of Gaza. Hamas wasn't interested. I mean, once you have power, it's very difficult to just give it away like this. That is why it is important to understand that the dynamic here was always, there was this equilibrium of tit and tat, of, tolerable nuisance. That's how the Israelis were behaving with Hamas, a tolerable nuisance that they have to contain. It's a terrorist organization, maintaining control over 2.3 million people, well embedded within the society. So what do you do? Options are very limited, short of, war crimes, really. I mean, the tactics have to be really harsh in order to really disengage Hamas from the rest of the population. I mean, a clearing will happen. So this is why I think what is happening here is that the Israelis opted now for what I call the Mosul Solution. I think the Mosul Solution is when the final decision that was taken by the world powers to get rid of ISIS in Iraq and in Syria. So they went into Raqqa, but also in particular, I take Mosul because Mosul is like Gaza. Like in Mosul and its surroundings, there are about 2.5 million people, similar population, and we can, see the example of that. So we can use Mosul as a similar case study in how do you get rid of a well-embedded militant organization within a confined territory. So when the coalition was moving towards Mosul and getting rid of ISIS, street by street, house by house, neighborhood by neighborhood, it was bloody. The reality is that at that time, no one was saying that the coalition was committing war crimes. I think because the ugliness of ISIS, the fact that there were multiple level of it was a multi-layered coalition. You have, ironically, you have Iranians fighting beside Americans, you have Kurds fighting beside Iraqis, you have Sunnis fighting beside Shia. I mean, it was unified on getting rid of this problem. So I think this is why there was a willingness by the international community and by people left and right to turn a blind eye to what's really happening in Mosul. The result is that anywhere between 16,000 to 25,000 civilians were killed in the process of liberating 2.5 million. So roughly about 1% of the population was killed. And the estimates vary, but nonetheless, there are 250,000 homes were destroyed. Mosul was flattened. And there was massive damage. Even the main mosque, An-Nuri Mosque, where Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, the caliph of Daesh, announced his caliphate and announced that he is the founder of the Islamic State. That mosque was destroyed in the process. All I'm saying is that Israel is not responding. They decided that they want to get rid of the problem once and for all. They cannot trust that there will be another atrocity where they will be taken by surprise without any obvious provocation prior to that happening, necessitating such action to be taken, where 1,250 civilians were killed, plus 250 soldiers of theirs. 1,500 fatalities in one day. In America, when 9/11 happened, that was 3,000, but can you imagine in a country of 330 million, comparison to a country of 6 million, you can see the severity of what happened. So the war is going to be, a similar phase of what happened, with Mosul, a similar process of going in, clearing house by house, street by street. And you pave for that by massive bombardment. Given the fact that Gaza is heavily concentrated area, with densely populated area, I would say, it's impossible to do this without any civilian casualties. I'm not condoning the cutting off of water, electricity, fuel. I'm not condoning any collective punishment. Let me be clear about this. I'm talking about tactics to get rid of a terror organization embedded within a civilian population that has refused so far to engage in any meaningful, peaceful talks, even with the mediation of countries like Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Qatar. And that is why, we have to understand that when you are presented as a leader, any leader, when you are presented with options to, rid yourself of a terror organization that have taken an entire population of, a place like Gaza hostage, in order to do the bidding of a foreign power like Iran, then getting rid of them is not going to be easy, and every option is going to be as worse as possible. There is nothing that could prepare anyone, any decision maker, to do, to undertake such operation without understanding there will be massive civilian casualties. And that is why, I would say, what is the best option for that? Hamas could do. If I was in Hamas' place, I will opt for the Beirut option. When Yasser Arafat and his PLO were boxed in a corner there in Beirut in 1982, what was the solution? Evacuation. So if Hamas really love their Palestinian brothers and sisters, they should at least consider, the idea of evacuation to Sudan, to Yemen. I think the Houthis would welcome them. This should be considered. Thank you.